All right. So I'm not gonna lie to you. This one is tricky. This topic. So you're gonna really want to pay attention to some of the tips and tricks I'm gonna explain to you. So right now we're gonna work in 3D shapes. So we're gonna be working with cones, cylinders, pyramids, and rectangular prisms. Okay. So we're gonna do one example for each type of 3D figure, and then you're gonna do a set on your own. All right, so let's start with the cone. The cone's probably the easiest. Okay, so a cone has a height of 8 units and a radius of 6 units. So this is the height. This is the height from the middle of the cone to the top. The radius, remember a radius is from the middle of a circle to the outside. With the cone, the bottom is a circle. What is the slant height? The slant height is this. Or in this case, this will be your hypotenuse. So the slant height is the same thing as your hypotenuse. Okay, because it's a slant height of the cone. So pretty much we have our A and our B, and we need to find our C, right? Because we have a triangle there. So we can use the Pythagorean Theorem to find the slant height of this cone. So we have a height of 8, and then we have a base of 6, or radius, and that's equal to our C, what we're trying to find. So what is 8 squared? 8 squared is 64. What is 6 squared? 6 squared is 36. So what is 64 plus 36? 64 plus 36 is 100. And then remember, we take the square root of each side. So C equals 10. But we have to label. So remember to always label. Okay? So what are the units in this? We don't have any units. So we know the slant height is 10 units. And we write units because that's what it says here. 8 units. And if there's no label here, that's why we put units. Okay? So that's the cone. Hopefully that one was pretty straightforward. Let's look at a cylinder. So again, a radius is the middle of a circle to the outside. So in a cylinder, we have a radius of 12 meters. So from the middle of the circle to the outside, the cylinder has a height of 6.4 meters. So the side height of the cylinder is 6.4. What is the slant height of the cylinder? So what that means in this case is we're going to connect the height of the cylinder to the radius. So the height of the cylinder to the radius is always your slant height. And that's what we're trying to find. So that's our C value. So again, we're going to use these values, this A value, this B value, and we're going to plug it into our formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. But there's something special about a cylinder. A cylinder has to be in diameter. So a cylinder, we don't use the radius, we use the diameter of the shape. We use the diameter. And the diameter is twice the radius. So it's twice the radius. So if we have a radius of 12, what's 12 times 2? So if our diameter is equal to 2 times the radius, we need to do 2 times 12 to find the diameter. So the diameter is 24. So now that's what we're plugging in for our cylinder for A. So we're actually plugging in 24 squared. The height stays the same with 6.4 squared. And then C stays C because that's what we're trying to find. So what is 24 squared? What is 24 times 24? It's 576. 6.4 squared, or 6.4 times 6.4, should be 40.96. And we're trying to find that c squared. Okay, so let's add those up. What is 576 plus 40.96? 576 plus 40.96 is 616.96, and we're going to keep that equal to our c squared. Take the square root of each side. Our slant height is equal to 24.8. And it's 24.8 what? What's our units? Meters. That's a terrible one. It's meters. Okay? And we know that because of here, meters. Meters. Alright, so cone was pretty straightforward. Cylinder needs to be in the diameter, so you need to do 2 times the radius. Now we get to one that's even harder, the rectangular prism. So, a rectangular prism has a length of 10 inches, a width of 3, and a height of 4. What is the length of the longest diagonal? So we have to find, really, the diagonal of this bottom here from one length of the box to the other. So just like we did that park in 1.7, so we need to find the diagonal here first. Because really the true longest one is length is really from this corner to this corner. So it extends down here. So we need to do this triangle. Boop, boop, boop. Down there, across here, and then this diagonal up here. So if we were doing the problem as is, we wouldn't know this diagonal or this bottom diagonal. So we need to find that bottom diagonal first. And we do that by taking the bottom diagonal, the width, and the length of the prism. So we have to find the green diagonal first. And then that would give us some information, some number here, so then we can find the true diagonal one. Okay, so hopefully that makes some sense. So let me write that down first. So we find hypotenuse of bottom rectangle. Okay, so that base rectangle. Then that will become a leg of the longest distance. Right. Longest distance diagonal. Sorry, couldn't think of the word diagonal. All right, so let's start off by doing the green triangle first. So green one, because again, we want to find this bottom diagonal because we need that as the base for our longest distance. So we always start with a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we have our bases, our a and our b are legs of the triangle because we're finding the hypotenuse. So we have 10 squared plus 3 squared equals c squared. So what is 10 squared? 10 squared is 100. What is 3 squared? 3 squared is 9. And what is c squared? C squared, c squared. So what is 100 plus 9? 100 plus 9 is 109. And then we're going to take the square root of that. And we're going to round to the 10th. Round to the 10th place. Okay, so that gives us c equals 10.4. So that means this diagonal here is 10.4. 6.4 inches. So now we could take that information, and that becomes our B in our next one to find the longest diagonal. So we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we have our A is 4 squared. Our B is what we just found in the last problem, 10.4 squared equals our C squared. So 4 squared is 16. What is 10.4 squared? 10.4 squared is 108. I'm going to put 16.16, okay, equals C squared. So what is 16 plus 108.16? That gives us 124.16. And then we find the square root, and we get C equals 11.1. So the actual longest diagonal is 11.1 inches. And that's why we can't just find the diagonal of the bottom, because that's only 10.4. Whereas the diagonal from one corner all the way to the other corner is 11.1. Okay? So we have one more to go. The square pyramid. All right, so let's look at that next. So the square pyramid has a slant height of 18 inches. So remember, we already said our slant height is our C. Our slant height is our hypotenuse. Okay, and a height of 12. So that's going to be a leg. What is the length of a side of the base? So we want to find a whole side of the base. But our A value is only from the middle of the triangle to the edge of the base. So it's only half the base. Our A. So whatever we get as our answer, we have to multiply it times 2, because 2 of our A's would go from one side of the base to the other. Okay, so that's really important. So whatever we get as an answer, we times it by 2 for A to find the actual length of the base, because that's what the question was. All right, so let's first find the length of A. So again, we know our slant height is C, so that's 18 squared. We know our length of B. Sorry, this is not A, this is B. Up here, that was my bad. The side of the base is A. Our B is 12 squared, and we need to find the length of our base, our A. Okay, so we just bring A squared down. What is 12 squared? What is 12 times 12? That's 144. What's 18 squared? 18 times 18 is 324. All right, so again, we want to get A squared alone. So we're going to subtract 144 on each side. And that's going to give us 324 minus 144. It's going to give us 180. So now we take the square root of each side. And we get A is equal to 13.4. Again, that's just our A value. So we have to multiply that by 2. Times that by 2 to get the base. So what is 13.4 times 2? 13.4 times 2 is 26.8 inches. All right, so That was a lot of work. All right, so looking at these next four, number 4's homework, I want you to choose 2 of them, of 1, 2, and 3. You only have to do 2 of them, so choose whichever 2 you want to do. When you unpause, I'm going to have all 3 written up there. So whichever one you didn't do, I would just copy that down to have as an example, okay? So pause the video, do 2, either do 2 of 1, 2, or 3, and then for homework, you'll still have to do 4, okay? Okay, so for number 1, it was the square pyramid, so you had to make sure that you multiplied your answer times 2, right? So that's just like the example 4. So hopefully you got 272 feet was the length of your base. If you got 136, just remember it's times 2 because the length in the equation only goes halfway. Number 2 was a cylinder, so you had to remember that you need to multiply your radius times 2 because your A is actually equal to your diameter, okay? So you needed to plug in a 12. So hold on, let me fix that. Okay, so you plugged in 24 for A because it's twice the radius, and you should get that your slant height of your cylinder is 51 centimeters. All right, so your rectangle, you had to do it twice, right? You do the Pythagorean Theorem twice. I drew my little diagram down here to kind of help. So we had the yellow triangle we had to do first because we needed the hypotenuse of that to use as a leg to find the actual longest dimension, right? Because we then would be comparing 55 versus 73. 73 is much larger, okay? So hopefully you did 2 of these, and whichever one you didn't do, copy the work down, okay? And number 4, the cone is your homework, and I think that one's the most straightforward, okay? May help to draw a cone. All right, good luck.